Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Dan Rice III, a game designer from Phoenix, Arizona. Dan is a native of Detroit, but has spent the last several decades in the desert. His new title, Trailblazer, the John Muir Trail, is currently on Kickstarter. Here to talk about it, Dan, welcome to the binge, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, James. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it is great to have you on the podcast. Congrats on this game. Yeah, I mean, you guys have, I think, 20 days to go, and you're crushing it. I think you're at least in Canadian dollars, I think you're at around $207,000 so far on it.
The campaign actually ended Tuesday morning.
Did it end this coming Tuesday morning, or the past Tuesday morning? This last Tuesday. Is there late pledges still coming or no?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Still a chance to.
Will be open for late pledges.
Oh, perfect. Well, I mean, over 200,000 on a $20,000 pledge, 10 times your goal. You must be absolutely stoked to have that kind of success on your first game.
Very excited. We weren't sure we were going to ever reach that point, but then we started getting little feelings like we might have something on our hands.
Yeah.
Kept tweaking it a little bit and reaching out to other people and kept test playing and demoing, and we kind of started believing in it, that it might be pretty strong.
Yeah.
What's even more exciting is everything that's happening behind the scenes, behind those numbers.
Now the real work begins, is what they say,
yes,
right?
True. Very true.
So you're in Phoenix, and it's kind of at the beginning I was talking about you're a Detroit native, and then I mean, you moved to Phoenix of all places. What got you to move to Phoenix? When did you? When that happened?
I was still a little boy, and my dad was a policeman in Detroit, and he kind of saw what was coming there and wanted nicer pastures for his career. So we ended up in Arizona.
Oh wow! And so you've been there several decades. When I see a game about hiking and things like that, usually the person you're talking to is an outdoors person. Is the outdoors a strong part of your life, or?
Yes, most definitely. I actually lived in Yosemite Valley back in the 80s for a little bit. And my daughter was a ranger for a couple of years there. And we've hiked several portions of the John Muir Trail, but it's always been a goal to hike the whole trail.
Now, have you ever hiked the whole trail, or?
No, that's still a goal.
Yeah, because it goes across, I think, like 3 state parks or something, right?
It does. Well, national parks.
National parks, yeah.
From Yosemite to the top of Mount Whitney in Sequoia National Park, through Kings and a couple of wilderness areas.
Oh, wow. How long would it take somebody if they would, like, for people who don't know, right? And I didn't know much about this.
Question. So I actually go through this a little bit when I'm teaching the game. So the trail is 215 miles long. If you start in Yosemite, you're at about 4,200 feet. Top of Mount Whitney is about 14,500.
Wow.
But between the up and down with all the passes, the elevation gain is 43,000 feet.
Holy smokes. So if you're going to start on one end, like, is that like a month, or like how long would it take somebody to do
that? It all depends on the person. So 20 days at 10 or 11 miles a day is a long time. But the record for 215 miles is 2 days and 19 hours.
Come on.
3 miles per hour.
So that person's basically just running nonstop. They're trying to break a record essentially at that point, right?
Pretty much. They pretty much had to do it during a full moon because of the danger, of seeing the trail and all over those passes.
Yeah. Is it a fairly safe trail in general to hike, or like
yes.
You're obviously running into a lot of wildlife and so forth, right? But
there's not a lot of wildlife this year, like compared to other places. You're still going to run into it. There's still bare possibilities to take your food, but not so many encounters that are dangerous. It's mostly personal things like twisting your ankle, blistering, things like that. Finding water in time. Dealing with the elements. A lot of times it's the passes like this time of year. If you're hiking now, you're dealing with snow.
Yeah.
High passes.
And that can get quite dangerous too, right? Like I did some hiking out Western Canada here, and that was one thing they're saying. They're saying be very careful on any snow covered, because you could fall down a crevice that you don't even know is there, right?
Yeah, that's different. There's not really crevices here. It's just real slick and could be icy, and it's steep. Everything in the Sierras is just up or down. There's almost no flat.
Now this is your first title,
Yes.
and you, I mean you're either retired or close to retirement age. What made you approach this at this point in your life? Has board games been part of something you've been passionate about your entire life, or is this more recent?
I grew up playing board games. I can still remember the little card tables that we used to have back in the 60s.
The round ones?
Ours was a little square thing.
Okay, yeah.
We do puzzles on it and all. But we played Candyland and Monopoly, just enough room to put Monopoly on it.
Oh boy, okay, that's small. Yeah.
But I played that endlessly, and when I was a little boy, I wanted to go to West Point, I thought, at that point. So my parents got me that, and it actually has a little engine builder board, little player board in that game from 1960, and we wore it out. It fell apart. We played it so much. But I've been playing games and sports my whole life, but kind of had a hiatus because there wasn't anything more. And then one of my daughters was all excited, and she never liked games when she was a kid, and she told me all about Ticket to Ride.
Yeah.
And that was a blast. We couldn't stop playing it. And then it was Catan, and then it just kind of evolved. And then my wife, knowing how much I love the national parks, we both do, and board gaming, got me trekking the national parks. And we played that about 6 years ago to the month. And we played it a couple times, and it just inspired me. I thought, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a long time ago that if you were going to write a book or do anything like that, you should choose something that you're familiar with, that you know about. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a board game. I'm going to use the same theory. Love the Sierras, know about it. That's what we're going to do. So it's been about 6 years.
I think when you look at this industry and and I'm sure this is something that happens to a lot of people that when they're playing board games, they look at a game and they think, I could have made this, right? Mm-hmm. And but there's a step between I could have made this to I should go and make something like this, right?
Yes.
And for me, I think it's just putting that foot forward taking that step, right?
Right.
And that's the hardest part, to say, okay, I'm gonna try something here. And it doesn't have to be even publishing, but even just to try to create something that you can even play yourself or play with family. You can, if you want to look somewhat professional, you can do it through Print and Play or the GameCrafter.com. Those are two great sites that allow you to do polished kind of prototypes, so you have something in your own collection. You don't have to publish, but if you have an interest, you should still take that step, right? And give it a shot. Absolutely. You got nothing to lose other than maybe some learning along the way, right?
You're going to learn a lot. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much to learn, and there's so much to learn about yourself and how you receive criticism and opinions and comments. There's so many things along the way, so many upsetting things, but I learned to digest them and take them to heart and deal with it. And if I hadn't, that wouldn't be the game that it is. I'd listen to a lot of people.
And that's sometimes tough for people too, right? Because not everybody loves, I hate to use the word criticism, but Yeah,
it's not exactly criticism.
But it's not though, right? It's feedback, right? There is some criticism out there you'll run into, sure. But I mean, just feedback. And I take it from the approach that if I can find somebody that's played way more games than I've ever played and all different types of game styles and so forth, they're going to be more informed in being able to articulate back to me why they think a certain thing is not working or why I should change. I got one buddy like that where, our latest prototype we're playing, and he's like, this reminds me of, and he listed off 6 games I never even heard of. And he goes, this piece here is kind of like that game, and this piece is kind of like that game, and I can see what you did here, and you might want to change this, and this other game approaches that in this way. It was all great advice. We went back, we made a bunch of changes, and the last time we played it, we're like, wow, this is a way better game than it was prior to getting that advice. When you created your first version of this game, was it pen, paper? Like, how did you create your prototype?
Well, I had the idea. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew there had to be movement. I knew people had to move on the trail, and I wanted to incorporate the things that are on there, the natural elements. So we have water, earth, wind, and fire, which is what basically form the Sierras or just about anywhere.
Yeah.
And then the other fun thing, the things you have to deal with, you have to come up with food and water every day. You got to find water. You got to make it happen. And then there's the sites, the destinations that Andrew Bosley did all the custom illustrations for 48, and he's doing 8 more right now.
Wow.
One of the stretch goals. And then there's the field guide cards, which a former ranger from Yosemite and Sequoia, she's a naturalist and botanist. She did all the field guide cards. So that's why they have a little different look than Andrew's, because it's meant to look like a field guide.
But before you had them illustrate, though, what did you use as you must have had something as a stand-in. Like we're using...
I hand drew everything because I don't have any graphic skills.
Yeah.
So I hand drew everything. Every single piece, cut it out, round cornered it, everything. And then my wife has some graphic skills, so I gave her an idea, and we cut and pasted and downloaded pictures and everything as guides, and we did it step by step. This iteration here is probably number 7.
Wow. So when you had that first, again, non-polished version, but something where you kind of hand drew it and your wife did some of the graphic design.
The very first one?
Or even say the first couple.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you take them out and start play testing with people in that state, or did you
No, just my wife and I for the first few months, probably, because I set this aside a lot of times because I didn't know where I was going with it or what to do sometimes, and I just set it aside. And it changed fast. We learned fast, but the biggest thing that happened to me was about a little over 3 years ago. I went to the Arizona Game Fair, and it really opened my eyes. That was the first time I'd been to any kind of convention, and I was listening to people. Lacerda happened to be there that year, so that was neat. That just listen to him talk about test playing.
Yep.
But I met someone there, and I reached out to him. I've learned in my old age to reach out to people. That's the only way to find out. So I reached out to this guy, Jason Washburn, Talent Strike Studios. He's had like 10 straight Kickstarter successes.
Yeah.
And real solid. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, honestly. He helped me so much with all the nuts and bolts. Like we originally had dice, and he told me why you don't use them. Those kind of things.
Why don't you use dice?
It adds to the time play. For the way we were going to use it, it adds time and it adds cost. So it depends on what you're trying to do. Like dice are part of the game, like in Crystal Palace, or it's an actual function. Creature Comforts, which just came out and uses dice, is just awesome the way they managed to use them. But to just roll, that was like old school. I didn't know any better. So I've spent the last 3 years, as much as I love games, I haven't been really trying to win games. I've been watching people play and just seeing what works and how things go together, how you arrive at balance and a smoothness of play. And that's what you're going to see in Trailblazer. It became very smooth and very balanced. And it's amazing how many people, I don't know if you've seen it when looking at reviews or anything.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how many people use the word relaxing or calm to play the game. I've never heard that for a game. It's really interesting, and yet it's pretty intense.
I think back to when I first started gaming a number of years ago. I was very, very competitive, right? And mainly probably because I was playing against my siblings, and siblings inherently have this kind of this vicious kind of rivalry. But ever since I entered kind of the indie board game industry and started attending meetups and so forth, I could care less if I win another game ever. Because for me, it's about enjoying the time with the people.
Right.
Having laughs. Of course, you're gonna try to win, but for me, it's more about the experience and hearing how people are interacting with these games and what are the things that are bringing them joy. Because that's something that as a game designer, you can bring into your own design and say, okay, well, that kind of thing worked well there, or this generated a lot of laughs there, and this generated a lot of excitement. And wow, that person seemed pretty sour in this particular regard.
Exactly.
We even had this, again, the other night we're playing this prototype, and it's fairly polished, but reached a position where the person's like, I think I broke the game. He goes, because I'm so far behind, it seems like it's almost impossible for me to come back. And this is like halfway into the game. And he was right. So what do we do when we left? We said, well, that's a bad experience, right? We don't ever want to have a game where someone is feeling kind of, and that's my Catan, I call it my Catan experience, because I never play Catan anymore, because it's one of those games where you get a bad roll of the dice, or you get a bad mix of numbers, you get a bad placement. If you're not good at negotiating, you're cooked, and you're cooked for 2 hours sitting there watching everyone else have a great time. Right. So I never want to have that kind of experience in any game that that I put out. So you want somebody to break your game, so you can find these ways to say, okay, that broke there. How can I fix that so that their experience is never going to be like that, right? So it's kind of cool, some of the things you can pick up in these play tests.
It is. Play testing is where it's at.
Yeah. When did you make the call to finally say, you know what, we're going to do this on Kickstarter? We think we got something here. This is a fun game. We've had people try it. We're going to take a run at Kickstarter. When did that decision happen, and how long was that after you actually started the idea of the game?
Well, it was always a possibility.
Okay.
Because it was there, but I would have preferred if somebody had picked it up, and my buddy Jason offered to, and then backed out. And at that point I was committed. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this, because he offered to help me on my own Kickstarter with advice still, and he still is.
Yeah.
On the pledge manager side now. But I have a printing background, so I know how to run projects, and I'm pretty familiar with how to manage art. I just can't do it myself.
Yeah.
So I can handle it. I love project management. I like all the details.
Yeah.
This is a little much, but it's fun. It's almost like more fun than a board game, because there's so many moving parts, and there's something on the line. You can't make, a board game you can walk away from and still have enjoyed it, but here you can't afford to make mistakes.
It is either something you love or you absolutely hate, right? Yeah. For me, I don't think there's really many degrees in there. I personally like it. Like, I like the whole managing the project and saying, okay, how, let's put our projections together, work at our costing models.
Right.
Okay, how much can we afford for art? How much can we afford for distribution? Oh, wow, your distribution rates just went up by tenfold. Okay, how are we going to accommodate for that? What are some safeties we can build in so we don't get caught? Like, all those kind of things. For me, I geek out over, because I like the business side of it. Not everybody likes that. Some people are like, let me do the design, and someone else can kind of take care of that, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was like 21. I had a pizza parlor when I was 21 years old, so I'm okay with whatever.
Yeah, so you're willing to take a little bit of risk. So can you walk us through, how do you play this game? So what's the essence of this game? Can you walk us through that?
Well, there's movement on the trail.
Yep.
In fact, you can score, but you can't win if you do not complete the trail. And that was a rule change we just made in the last couple of months, because people started doing the numbers as they got towards the end, and I can make more points if I don't finish the trail, and it kind of compromised the whole integrity of what it was. So that's the key. But saying that, it's easy to move. You just take the hardship token if you can't meet the requirements, all the requirements, and there's a way to get rid of those. It's a pretty user-friendly game. So you're moving on the trail. You're going to take actions like collecting field guide cards that are set collection points at the end of the game. You can visit different destinations and get instant trail points there. Whoever gets the most trail points is the winner at the end. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. There's a lot of instant trail points through trail cards, which get played every day at the start of the day. And the backpack is the key. Mm-hmm. So all of these cards, or most all of them, have a little backpacking symbol in the bottom left. And you have 12 spaces in your backpack, and there's 12 items. And anytime you acquire or play a card with that icon in it, if you don't have that item in your backpack, you place it there. So you start filling your pack. It never comes out. And as you fill your pack, you trigger different rewards as you move up as well. Once it's in your backpack, and then you acquire a card with that item on it, then you start moving up the elevation chart on the bottom left of the game board. And that's where the magic is at. That's the only way you can get your extra tracks tokens, which equate to your worker placement. So you start with 3, you can get up to 5. And it's the only place that you can get arrowheads, which give you end game bonus numbers. So you have to move up that track. So there's a balance between filling your backpack and then using the items in your backpack, because also whoever does each of those first gets a mini reward along the way as well. So there's incentives all over the place, built in layers everywhere.
Yeah, when we were off air, we were talking about this. I said, wow, this is a robust game. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, but as you said, it kind of in John Gets Games. I mean, I was saying, I'm obviously a big fan of his. He does amazing work. We had him on the podcast, and I was watching his explainer video, and he goes through every single step. And what you can quickly start seeing is things like the different things you have to do seem very logical, right? Like,
it's very intuitive.
Yeah. Intuitive is the word. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. It's very intuitive as you're doing the different things and okay, how am I going to place my mark? What thing am I going to check out next? And as I was watching that, I was realizing that this is something that people can probably pick up fairly quickly. I don't think it's a kind of game where you have to play 1 or 2 or 3 games before you get it. I think once you go through the first kind of round, you've got a good handle on exactly how, to perform the actions. When I was going through the page, you guys unlocked a lot of stuff, right?
We did.
And, anybody that loves games that have a lot of stuff in them, this got a lot of stuff. Right, like everything, even from like your meeples are printed hikers, your tent meeples, the different tokens you have with the weather. It just keeps coming layer after layer after layer of stuff, which I think is pretty cool. Was there anything in here that you guys, because you did so much better than maybe you originally had targeted, that you kind of added mid-campaign? Or like, oh, like we gotta throw something else in here, or was this all kind of pre-mapped out?
Well, I've had the idea for a long time. The ideas that did come out, we didn't know if we were going to get there.
Yeah,
but it worked out. We've got Andrew's 8 destination cards. I think is going to be the really nice one. Yeah. So, and then we didn't reach 175, but we're going to offer those cards. It's another 20 cards. So the stretch goals, especially the funding goal, the black bear and the blue bird, is really sweet. It adds an element of fun that's really different than a lot of other games. We've had a blast with it, test playing it. It takes over the game sometimes. Not the gameplay, but everybody wondering where the bear's going to land. It's pretty funny. And then the cards, I've seen a lot of campaigns where they'll add 3 cards and 6 cards, and it's every $5,000.
Yeah.
They trigger. So we stretched out the stretch goals so that each time we did hit one, it was meaty. It was big. So it was 20 cards at a pop. So,
did you do that by a card sheet? Was it based on how many cards to fit on a card sheet? So we're going to have to add
how many can fit?
Yeah, because like a lot of people don't realize is even to add 3 extra cards sometimes could be another complete sheet. Right?
Honestly, I know about that, having a printing background.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to compromise what we're going to do. So we're just printing what we're printing, and that's that.
Can you tell us
like you were pointing out, the box itself was loaded to begin with.
Yeah.
So with the stretch goals, it added another 100 cards.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's no doubt. There's a lot of stuff in this box. I mean, I was actually surprised it was actually the price was as low as it was. I almost
had it low on purpose.
Yeah, felt a bit underpriced, but I mean, that's the benefit of Kickstarter, right? Is you can sometimes get your hands on something, that if it ends up at retail is going to be a lot more expensive, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the solo version? So you had someone come in and help you with this. Before you talk about who the individual did that for you, the decision to do solo, was that always there from the beginning as well? Or is this something that kind of, okay, we got the base game now, let's get a proper kind of solo mode made? How did that come about?
Well, we've always had the beat your own score solo a category, which is easy to do in this game actually.
Yeah.
And it'll work well for the retail version. But I thought it would be kind of tricky to do with this, but we happened to hit upon the right person. Yeah. And this young man came to us at Dice Tower and sat down, and he started talking, and it sounded like he knew about the trail. So I said, well, have you hiked the trail? And he said, yeah, he hiked the whole trail.
Oh, wow.
So then we really hit it off, and he was enjoying the game. And so I thought, well, I need to find out who this guy is. So I looked down and his name tag said John Clare. And I looked up with 50-cent eyes and said, "Are you John D. Clare?" And he said, "Yeah." So he ended up inviting us to his house for a game day with over 40 people.
Oh, that's cool.
And we went over and we just kept chatting, and I threw it at him, and he said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." And he kind of had an idea, and he'd never done that for someone else. So it's awesome that he's done that. He's hiked the trail. So
yeah, that kind of helps. Not only do you have somebody
he's-
that has the credentials, right, that he comes with in terms of solo game design, but to have intimate knowledge of the subject matter and the theme. I mean, that's got to be almost invaluable, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need that to create the solo mode.
Oh, sure.
But he loved the game without even playing it. He could just tell, just by looking at it, it was a good game. But his solo mode is for beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So there's 3 difficulty levels as well. Plus, you can take 2 people and hike against 2 robo hikers as well.
Okay, so is it like an autonomous deck, or how do you handle that?
Yes.
Okay.
24 cards. It's pretty unique. We're going to be posting that in the next week or 2. We'll have that all up.
Oh, that's cool.
We couldn't get it done in time for the Kickstarter.
Is there a tabletop simulator version of this game?
That's coming too. That was supposed to be there. There's a lot of stuff. We kind of had a drop dead date to get on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
May 10th. And we just had to go. We had to go with it. And it's been in process for 2 weeks. And it's out of my control to some degree.
Well, clearly that didn't hold you back, but it's good to know, because there's a lot of people that like tabletop simulator, give them a chance to play the game.
Yes.
And certainly if they decide it's something they love, then they come in for a potentially a late pledge. So now this, you're in your retirement years, you've finally put a game out there, followed your passion. I got to ask, is there more games in your belt? Is there a desire to keep going with game design, or has this kind of been
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is my retirement.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Retirement as a hobby or retirement as a jobby?
Jobby. Yep. We've had the expansion idea. We actually played with it for a couple of years and pulled it out because it was too mixed up with what we were trying to do. So, but we tweaked it and refined it, and now it's coming back into the game. It'll be a lot sweeter.
Yeah, I was talking to what's his name? Isle of Cats. I had him on the podcast twice, and I can't remember his name. There's been so many people on the podcast, but people know Isle of Cats. When we were talking to the designer of that game, he was saying that he had some. It was Honeybuzz. My mistake. I was talking about it was Honeybuzz. Yeah, with Elf Creek Games, right. And he was saying that when he was creating the initial Honeybuzz, all the expansions in versions 2 was actually part of the initial game, and he peeled them out. Right? He's like,
yeah. There's
too much stuff. Like this is too much going on. But these are things that if people are into the franchise and really like this game, man, these could be really awesome kind of add-ons afterwards. And so that was his approach. He said, okay, I'm going to put them back in as expansions and so forth. So, so it's kind of cool to see that approach, right? It just goes to show that you can keep creating. Anybody creates a game, it's never done, right? In your mind, there's always more you can do. And sometimes you just kind of have to put a stick in the sand and say, okay, there's other stuff that we're going to add. Maybe we'll bring that for another phase or another kind of expansion or so forth, right? So
that will be it for Trailblazer. It's that expansion. That'll be enough on it. So we've got another trail game in the works.
Have you been scoping in any other themes outside of the trails? Is it going to be more nature theme for you, do you think? Or
I've got 2 other games in process that I've just put on the shelf for 2 years.
Oh, that's cool.
Totally unrelated.
Yeah.
But we feel like we need to come out with another Trailblazer game. the blank trail instead, a different one.
I'll just do another trail.
Play totally different. Well, not just another trail. It's going to be very interesting, totally different mechanics, very different.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But it'll be a trail.
Do you have like a social media channel that people can follow, like, and can, as you kind of update and say, hey, here's some stuff that's coming out, that they can follow along? Like, is there like a Facebook group or anything that
we have a Facebook page for Trailblazer, the John Muir Trail board game. We're just kind of getting that active. Mostly I've been active on Instagram for a long time,
and how do they follow you on Instagram? Do you have what's your Instagram handle?
Mariposa Games.
Mariposa Games. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, Dan, this has been awesome. I can't congratulate you enough. This is an incredible outcome for your first game. It sounds kind of corny to say dreams come true, right? But it kind of is like a dream come true, right? It's something that you think about when you through your life, say, someday I'd love to do this, and that someday's now. You've made it happen.
It's true. It does still feel kind of surreal.
Yeah.
Very surreal for the last month, and it still kind of feels funny.
Oh, it's so cool. For anybody anybody that wants to check out this game, I am including a link to the Kickstarter page in the show notes, although the campaign's done. As you said, that there will be some opportunities potentially for some late pledges there, so keep your eye out on that. At the very least, check out the page, because it's really cool to see all the stuff that Dan has put into this. Dan, I want to wish you all the best in this coming year. Right?
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.